Hello, and welcome to Malcolm Show, episode 14. As you can see, we've already done one move on the board today. I had a slight tech mishap as I was setting up the episode, but we're all hunky dory. So, uh, today I'm going to talk about whatever comes to mind first. As I found that this podcast thing it started off quite fun. It still is quite fun. I like the idea of it being a study technique because it helps me think out loud, it helps me think things through, it helps me solidify how I feel about certain things and understand concepts a little deeper. Let me see if you understand that. I doubt it because oh, it does. Level 1 does understand. Okay, so do we want to take that centric on? Maybe. Because in the rook circle. Beautiful. Okay, so that knight's got a pocket in it, isn't it? I guess we're just talking about chess today. I am a little bit excited to play chess, I can't lie. It's been a stressful week. I'll tell you what it is, right? Past fortnight or so, I've averaged maybe 3 or 4 hours sleep per night, and I managed to get up to interrupted sleep as it was a total of maybe 10 hours from Friday through to Saturday, and about 6 hours Saturday through to Sunday. So I feel somewhat caught up. I think there's still a little bit of sleep catch up to be done just for the sake of making sure I'm healthy and whatnot. Happy, healthy, fit and well. So, I've had written scripts for this before. However, I found that I enjoy the formatting of this far more when it's more of a free form thought. So let's talk about marketing a little bit because I'm studying marketing at university and I want to understand marketing a little bit better. The appeal of marketing to me mostly comes from a psychology standpoint. I like understanding how the mind works. I like understanding how people work. I think understanding human behaviour is what can be difficult at the best of times, even for those among us who are very socially adept. So marketing. I've been reading a book recently on sales techniques called Sell Like Crazy by Bruce B, which is pretty good. It was recommended to me by a friend who I train boxing with and climbing. I have to say, a lot of the advice in it seems, and this is me coming from a student perspective and trying to be critical of somebody who's a multi-million-pound business, so let's take all this grains of salt. It seems very much geared towards bringing in mass consumer rather than tailored to luxury and customer profiles, would be the simplest way to put it. It seemed very clickbait heavy, it seemed very attention grabby, trigger based, focusing very much on exploiting emotional selling techniques might be it. So giving credit where it's due and understanding that these sales techniques exist for a reason and marketing techniques exist for a reason, it seems to me that emotional sales, pardon me, I do not know anyone. Maybe a little bit. I put the Hitman's bars up over the other, over my recording screen. I'm curious about getting young. I had this whole thing about the Matrix being real, and I think, we can get into that in a minute, maybe later on after the marketing. So the marketing stuff seems far more conducive for me professionally, at least academically, at least as well as professionally. The Matrix stuff, from an entertainment value, probably be more likely to get clicks in here. So then from a marketing perspective, it probably makes sense for me to talk about the Matrixy stuff. So let's see if we can combine the two, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of Matrix, bring it all together, see what we create. I'm of the opinion that the Matrix is very much real because I don't know if it's necessarily as real as the Keanu Reeves film depicted it. However, I'm very certain that the world we live in has become so enmeshed with computers and other forms of technology that we are basically already living in what could be described as a singularity as per the definition of Ray Kurzweil and other similar AI experts. So I think it's one of those things that the more time you spend looking for it, the more time you see it, which is true of any sort of pattern-based phenomena, and it's very difficult to describe if you don't see it. It's a bit like being an expert in an industry that it is, yeah, it's a little bit like being an expert in an industry, because then you have to explain the stuff in a way that is really obvious to other people that know what you know and see what you see, and at the same time it's making it clear to those people what you're seeing isn't some BS you're trying to sell them, it's genuinely the way things are. So for me, I see lots of it. I think the simplest way I started seeing it all, and how I understand it to be, the singularity has already begun. Because if the singularity happens the way it's being predicted to happen, it will basically become the Matrix. That would be end state for that. Think about it, right? Two big things would be AI and nanotechnology. So we focus on AI bit because that's what I understand better. Nanotechnology is something I want to get to more. My attention was brought to it by reading something called The Final Invention by James Barrett, which those are the two technologies which would essentially give machines control over humans. So if, from a marketing perspective, to try and make sure I'm balancing myself out here, that's actually really strong, because then what's marketed to us could be argued as part of the singularity in the Matrix and all that. So I see it in the sense that every algorithm that's going on, whether it's biological or digital, is responding to input to create its output. So if we focus on the digital algorithms, because that's the more matrixy side of it first, everything that gets advertised to us, it exploits our emotional leverages. So for example, if you've been through any personal hardships, professional hardships, it will focus on that information. So let's say, for instance, a relationship in your life is strained, it will be aware of the emotional change in your behaviour because it can monitor change in your behaviour. Whether or not it specifically knows that you've been through a breakup, or you have issues with your parents, or you get nervous meeting new people, or basically issues that I've had recently and or struggle with in my life. Point stand is, the behaviour patterns, whilst they might not be specifically encoded in the algorithm's database as, Malcolm's had this, that, and the other happen to him, they are aware of the behaviour as a pattern. So maybe they collate that pattern, compile that pattern as, oh, Malcolm's done behaviours A, B, and C today on, Tuesday at 6 a.m, 10 a.m, and 8 p.m. Okay, he's done that for the past however many weeks. We can reasonably induce that if he's going to do it this time, he's likely to do it next week. Okay, when he does the behaviours in this sequence, his Wednesday typically goes in this order, and then his Thursday goes in that order. And the important thing to remember is computers don't need to drink, they don't need to eat, they don't need to sleep, they don't need to toilet, they don't need to wash. None of the stuff that typically interferes with human productivity processes will affect a machine. They can literally go 24/7, and provided they're plugged into a power source, they're going to do their job, and they're going to do it to the best of their ability, and the only thing that's going to stop them is a human stopping them. So with that in mind, I think it's very important to remember everything you think about your life to be private is in an end state singularity known by the machines, to use the terminology from the Matrix. So we go between humans and machines just as a simple classification, in want to respect our potential future computer overlords. I don't know if they'll refer to themselves as machines. It's just, at this point in time, I really hope I don't look back at this in however many years and I'm using offensive language. It wasn't intentional. Let's plow on with what we're trying to say. So, from a marketing perspective, when the marketing company knows more about you than you know about yourself, then it's able to predict your behaviour more and more accurately, with such increasing precision, that eventually you're not going to feel like you're being marketed towards. It's just going to feel like you're living your life. It's like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. And I may have mentioned this in previous episodes. It's one of my personal beliefs that the ideas of coincidence and random, just it's simply math you don't understand yet. I really don't think there's a genuine form of coincidence or random anymore. I'm not an expert mathematician, so bear with us. I really don't believe in coincidence or random anymore. It's just far too synchronous. It's far too easy to connect the dots and find a meaning behind it. It was like, well, hang on, that makes all this sense and that makes that sense, and it just, I don't know. I learned it when I started speaking to detectives when I was younger. So a friend of friend, my dad's friend's friend, was a detective with the police, and was the first one to mention it to me. They don't, police officers at his level don't believe in coincidence. They don't believe in random. There's evidence. There's always a trail. There's always something going on, and the more I've taken that advice on board and thought about it logically, there's always a reason behind something. Just because it makes you uncomfortable or unhappy doesn't mean it's not an accurate reason. And I think that's the tricky part of trying to have the conversations about living in a matrix or a singularity or whichever terminology is more accurate or more correct, is some people are genuinely uncomfortable with the idea of something knowing something arguably inanimate, understanding them better than they understand themselves. They don't like the idea of the machine knowing them that well because it makes them feel vulnerable. And I understand that because, well, why is that empty blonder or missing? It is a free pawn, however, then Rick could just follow it behind, wouldn't it? And the more you understand how an algorithm will target you at your hungriest, sleepiest, thirstiest, horniest, loneliest, all these other various markers which would capitalize on the emotional vulnerability humans inherently have, even if you were a psychopath, a sociopath, schizophrenic, autistic, I mean, whichever portion of the mental health spectrum you align with, anywhere along that it is somewhat irrelevant because you still have behavior patterns. Even if you feel yourself to be entirely unemotional or perceivably unemotional to most of your peers, there are still biochemicals floating around inside of you which dictate a behavioral pattern which can be mapped out by an algorithm. And whether or not that algorithm can currently map that out perfectly and understand your entire hormonal and neurotransmitter profile is not the point. It's the fact that it's possible, which means it's coming, which means it's on the way, in the same sense that the singularity is not an if, it's a when. And part of the singularity would mean your entire behavior profile being mapped out so accurately, you might as well be a machine yourself, just one slightly more complicated than what we understand to be a machine in this current day and age. So linking that to the marketing stuff, it's understanding that marketing is effectively pre-programming. So pre-programming is basically massaging public consciousness to be more accepting of future ideas. It's often been phrased in the sense that, why is that? Oh, okay. Is that significant reduction? That's a significant reduction. So everything marketing-wise basically functions as a pre-programming idea because whatever they're marketing towards you, they're trying to assimilate your mind to a concept that's coming in the near future. Whether that be a product, a service, something else, the idea is they're increasing the public awareness of it. So to delve a little further into, I hesitate to say tinfoil hat country, there's a definitely better way to say that, is just, I'm going to indulge myself here and talk about something I find interesting I don't get talked about a lot. I think brainwashing and mind control techniques and propaganda are all effectively the same thing. And the more you live in a technology prioritizing society, the more the effects similar to brainwashing, mind control, and propaganda will start to take place. The more of an effect they're going to have on the civilization you're living in, the more effect it's going to turn society into well-behaved citizens. And then, yeah. Okay. So I'm partially focusing on the chess here, partially focusing on my train of thought, so bear with us as I find my way through all of this. Something I found that seems somewhat peculiar was bearish and bullish markets. Because the more bullish I find things, the more I understand that that could easily be a marketing perspective influenced by an external algorithm. So whether that external algorithm happens to be artificial intelligence, a deity of whichever domination or deities, an extraterrestrial species, or simply a military program, or time traveling human, it's the source of that external algorithm is less the point as much as there is an external algorithm that is working to affect your perception, which is what a marketing department is. A marketing department can be a single person. A marketing department is effectively an entity which wants to change your perception. It's the link of one of the things that fascinates me about marketing is that psychological perspective of it. It is in effect basically a it's a politically correct brainwashing. That's what marketing is. And I mean, just take for example some of the most successful companies you've ever heard of. Even if you don't shop with them, even if you just walk past them, you get a familiarity for their brand and how they behave. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're selling coffee or they're selling shoes. The amount of brands that you're aware of that you may have never bought or barely ever buy, and however you're aware of what they sell, what their typical demographics are, what their market aims are, the bigger understanding you have of that, the more you can translate the terminology between the various concepts. So for example, let's start with coffee and shoes, right? If you're selling coffee, regardless of which brand you're selling for, you're selling a consumable product. So the idea of the consumable product, if you were a marketing department, you're trying to look at it. It's very tasty, it's very affordable, it's all the cool kids are drinking it, that kind of idea. If you're working that angle, brainwashing, mind control, propaganda, I'm going to use the term propaganda simply because that's a more literal term, and brainwashing, mind control feels a little bit too tinfoily. If you're working a propaganda department in a foreign country, let's say for example, because it's one of the three pillars of espionage, as by Yuri Bezmenov, is defense, economics, and foreign relations, which, I'll be quite honest, the terminology foreign relations compared to international relations, I don't know the difference, so I'm just quoting him because I understand it from the context of the video. If you've not seen the Yuri Bezmenov interviews, very much worth watching. It's a beautiful description of how subversive techniques happen. And here we are. So if it's propaganda based, you'd want to, as per Jocko Willink, one of the first things anybody does when they take over a foreign nation is capture the radio waves, because you want to have an influence what people are listening to. In the same way, you want to take over the television systems because you influence what people are watching. Pardon me. I think because I'm speaking this quickly, there's still a lot of oxygen coming in and out. Luckily, I have a glass of water just in case. So, marketing department and marketing propaganda, marketing departments and propaganda units have the same ultimate objective in mind. So with that in mind, the coffee example, the propaganda department and the marketing department they want to promote their item, whether that be a message, a product, service, in the brightest and most flattering light possible. So that coffee could very easily be, if we consider coffee as more service-based, it could be in the sense that the propaganda department might align themselves. try not to name any specific countries to prevent accidentally inferring any international political relations, as well as just, talk about something I don't understand. If I just go through countries A, B, and C. If country A, in this example, is the home nation, and country A wants to encourage patriotism for, I don't know, perhaps military sign-ups, perhaps to create homogeneous peace, perhaps just to stabilize dissenting youths, then perhaps coffee brand A is so popular again, is rebellious youth, that they'll align themselves with it to, perhaps overtly, perhaps covertly. That part is, the propaganda department would probably be more covert than the marketing. Yeah, propaganda is basically covert marketing, and marketing is overt propaganda. That's quite interesting. That's good. There you go. So, with that in mind, you follow the logic that coffee brand A is associated with target demographic A, which means country A wants to support coffee brand A, which I'm going to rename company A for simplicity's sake. So we've got company, country, target demographic, or market. So company A is looking at the market, the target demographic, in the sense of they want to turn a profit, they may not have any specific ideological messages. However, country A identifies that company A's target demographic and primary customer base has a very large proportion of younger customers who are more likely to be influenced by, or they're more susceptible to messaging. It's much easier to shape younger minds. It's just a biological factor. So it might be that if you have the capability to run a matrix or a singularity or any other sort of virtual reality machine, because effectively that's what it would become, is one homogenized reality generator, then you'd want to create affiliations between company A and country A in a positive light. So say, for example, the Euro Championships? There's a European football tournament going on at the moment, which means there's several nations participating. So, for instance, I think it was Saturday night, the English team were playing Swiss team. So let's say, for example, an English-speaking country, this is the thing, I'm trying not to get too specific politically here. Let's say there's an international football tournament going on and country A's team is playing. Company A is, they're selling as usual. They see the opportunity from the tournament going on to, yes, these people are all attending the tournament, which means we're more likely to spend money because they're being high spirits, as well as spending money specifically on our item, because in that situation it might be more of an alcohol brand than a coffee brand. However, the principal sense of liquid, it's very broad. However, follow your train of thought. That's fine. So I'm just checking the chat and things. I don't have the chat screen up. I tried to show the hypnoscripts I have on my alternative screens last week, but they didn't show up. No, I think I did briefly. Basically, it's a swirly thing with subliminal messaging to help recondition my mind because, well, I was a bit of a reprobate youth and I don't want to be a reprobate youth anymore. So, as I was saying, Company A takes advantage of international sporting event to increase sales by launching a marketing campaign which maximizes efficacy of emotions. So country A capitalizes on that opportunity because they see their political agenda aligns with the financial agenda of the company. So if the company and the country's agendas can align, then the country is going to capitalize on that because marketing is overt propaganda and propaganda is covert marketing. So the more you can associate your brand the reason I said specifically coffee and then mentioned alcohol is things like alcohol and coffee, they're addictive substances. And it's very important to remember that no matter how weak you think your addiction is to those substances, most people are consuming them daily, especially in, yeah, so I've almost found myself especially in a country. And I'm just noticing it's little things like the more you pay attention to, for example, if you take, I'm trying not to shoot myself in the foot, take patriarchy as an example, is that as soon as you start focusing on what patriarchy is conceptually, you start seeing more father-based imagery and masculinity and phallic imagery and all these sort of things which align themselves with male ego expression. In the same way that if you take the counterpoint, which I don't know if it's called masculinism, but we're going to call it that because if a side's called feminism, then the other side would be called masculinism, because that to me just seems the binary logic there. Glossing over binary, non-binary, that's, I don't understand enough about it. I'm not trying to insult, offend, or upset. I'm just trying to walk through this. So, with these addictive substances, which many people consume daily, let's be fair, the majority of the population consumes alcohol or caffeine. Most of them consume both, as well as, let's be fair, in alcohol consuming environments as well as caffeine consuming environments, there's often nicotine smoke in the air, which anybody who's tried to stop smoking cigarettes is very aware of how immersive nicotine is in the general public. You can be walking down the street and I'm speaking for myself here, I'm sure many others have gone through it. You'll walk down and you'll notice like, oh, somebody's put a cigarette in their mouth, oh, somebody's put the lighter, oh, somebody's, and like your head just unconsciously moves. You're like that, because the addiction's so finely ingrained into you, you'll walk past it and you'll almost find yourself involuntarily trying to breathe in their cigarette smoke because the biology of your body just wants to satisfy that craving. So never underestimate the power of addiction. You really, really can. And to combine that with the idea from the propaganda base, which is, as we said before, basically brainwashing, mind control, the whole MK Ultra thing. If you're familiar with MK Ultra, then this stuff probably seems fairly obvious to you. So, for an example, MK Ultra, most of that is done through hypnosis and trauma programming. And I would add to that, it probably involves a certain level of addiction leverage. Because if you can exploit somebody's addictions, then it makes it much easier to subdue negatively perceived behavior, right? So, what do we want to do? Let's just develop a bishop. So, let's say company A produces alcohol and or caffeine. Country A is in the country A has no legal prevention. I'm trying to factor in for dark countries here. Country A is, it's legal for alcohol and caffeine and whatnot. Then the international sporting event where company A is marketing and selling all of its addictive substances in emotionally driven environments will then be capitalized on by country A's political manifesto. Oh, that's not the right word, is it? Agenda, manifesto. There's a distinction there which I don't know, however I'm just sure that there is one. So let's go here. Which means that effectively, the more the country operates in alignment with the emotional status of its citizens, the more in tune it can be with the emotional status sociologically. And then the individual psychology is easier to understand, because regardless of how independent and individual you feel you are as a human being, you are still a human being, which means you operate under the same basic tenements of biology. So if you operate under the same basic tenements of biology as every other human being, then you're going to be responsive to, chemical-induced messaging. Oh, that was a little bit too easy. So chemical-induced messaging would be, I think in its simplest form, aligning alcohol and caffeine brands with political messaging. So this is where it starts to get a bit more theoretical, or maybe hypothetical is a better word, than pure logic. If you were able to synchronize a marketing campaign with such efficacy that you could, so for anybody who's ever recovered from alcoholism, your awareness of how you drink alcohol or any liquid becomes hyper aware. You become so in tune with what triggers you to want a drink of anything, whether it's water, milk, orange juice, lemonade, iron brew, whatever it is, right? That self-awareness becomes so it's like living in hypervigilance, and effectively that can feel somewhat debilitating because you end up overthinking, oh, why am I doing this, why am I doing that, and you sort of having to relax and try and figure out, okay, well, if I'm relaxing, I'm going to relax too much, and then there's a huge, I don't know the right words to describe it. Effectively, it becomes its own behavioural conditioning thing because you understand what conditions your behaviour in the first place to cause you to respond to stressful stimuli with alcohol. So then you understand what you found to be stressful stimuli in the first place, even if you didn't originally recognise it as stressful stimuli. Whether that's a social situation or whether it's personal or professional, you identify what the triggers were. And then effectively you want to start countering the triggers. You want to figure out, okay, that's what made me want to drink. Oh, okay, that's what, I was more upset about than I realised I was. And, it's great for personal discovery. It's also really, really tricky to... It's inescapable is the thing, because effectively you're always going to need to drink at least water. And I'm somewhat thinking of June where they say don't get addicted to the water. So the idea that's coming to mind is that the idea of becoming addicted to water is an idea in the sense that if you want to stay alive, you are effectively encouraging yourself to be addicted to water because water is an essence of life. So regardless of how much water you're drinking and the quality of water you're drinking, you will be consuming water, which means effectively there will be a behavioural conditioning effect going on. At such a subliminal level, I think that's occipital? No, that's occipital works quite well. Operant conditioning. Or as I prefer to call it environmental conditioning, because let's say for example, newborn baby, you put them in a room, the parents sets up, the parents aren't trying to intentionally condition the baby, they're just trying to, make a nice room for the baby gets operantly conditioned by it instead of having the parents check in, once a hour and, clicking the thing whilst waving the stuffed animal at the child. So that association of behavioural conditioning is somewhat inescapable simply because there will always be involuntary behavioural conditioning as a consequence of life, which combine that with stuff like alcohol and caffeine and nicotine means that it's very easy for a marketing company to capitalise upon that and identify those involuntary behavioural conditioning associations via whether it's algorithmic behaviour detection or response from marketing campaign testing trials, or simply by interviewing customers and figuring, oh, that's what you like. Okay, well, we can do something like that. Pardon me. So whether it's a marketing campaign or propaganda campaign, marketing is overt propaganda, propaganda is covert marketing. Pardon me. Repetition is key. So much of the time we don't actually need to learn something, we need to remind ourselves of it, so I'm just ingraining that passion in my head. Pardon me. That's that. So bold. Bold. Fish. Oh, okay. So, company A selling their addictive liquids. Country A identifies the addictive liquid plus emotionally triggering international sporting event provides opportunity for opinion molding, social engineering, or I think probably it's yeah, it's a social engineering opportunity. So it's I think that one of the key things to remember is however over the top you think this analysis is, marketing departments and propaganda departments are never off. They're always working either for their company to generate profit or for their country to produce the ideological status that country deems ideal, whether that's in a democracy or a dictatorship or anything between or external of that. Just without trying to sound rude here, just because you wouldn't put in that effort into the project doesn't mean they won't put that much effort into the project. Think about anything you've ever worked at in your entire life, anything you studied, trained, worked. Let's take sports as a really obvious example. If you begin a new sport today and you go up against someone who's been doing it for over a decade, they're likely better than you, simply by the fact that they've been doing it. If they've been training, let's say, 5 times a week for a decade, they're better than you. Because simply by you training 5 times a week for over a decade, the logical inference is that you've picked up at least the fundamentals. You may not be the most technically proficient, you might not be the most, you know, athletically gifted, you might not be any of the best in any comparable metric. The point stands is you will do more than an absolute beginner. So, with that in mind, combine that knowledge with the digital assets that companies and countries have. That, as I said before, the digital algorithm doesn't need to drink, it doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to toilet, it doesn't need to wash. So it can work 24/7, which means the data collection to make. Let's be very clear about this. Marketing campaigns capitalize on emotional distress. They capitalize on emotions. Whether that's emotional, I should say emotional arousal more than emotional distress. They capitalize on emotional arousal, whether those are quote unquote positive or negative or positive emotions, right? Because the positive emotion, like if you're happy and in a good mood and they want to associate the brand with that, and you're going to think of every time in a good mood, I'll drink a so and so, or every time in a bad mood, it's commiserations, I should probably have a so and so. You get the idea of it, and anybody who's been through the alcoholism spiral and upwards or downwards, because it's a whole thing. It's a vastly complicated world when you get into that, because you realise how difficult it is to separate from your social life and even professional life to some extent. But alcoholism it might be a subject piece for a future podcast. It's probably a good place to talk about. Today, stay on topic, marketing and matrices. So, marketing is overt propaganda, propaganda is covert marketing. I'm making sure I remember this because that's going to be a beautiful piece to put in one of my essays for university. So, apart from that one list, that was a really nicely played. Okay, so continuing the idea that company A and country A have aligned interests because of the emotional arousal caused by international sporting event means that company A stands to make a profit, which is what a company is kind of founded to do. There might be, social goals alongside that. However, you would just, let's not BS here. In a capitalistic society, a company is founded to make a profit. So, capitalistic society, company wants to make a profit, country wanting to homogenize ideological goals, combine that together, and the emotional arousal caused by international sporting event means you get a very malleable market and or market, target, whatever kind of thing. I'm really enjoying the comparison between the two. It really is. I got the idea. I was going slightly off topic. My first year course had an optional module. In my course is titled Consumer Behavioural Marketing, replacement year. One of the optional modules was called War and Warfare, and I was like, brilliant, I'm going to find out a bit about espionage, and I thought the propaganda angle would be quite cool for it. And especially given how many businesses describe business as a war and all that sort of thing. So, and I think that perspective is actually really important to keep in mind is, like I said before, there was the athletics example, and you could do so with academics as well. It's like, just because you're not fussed about getting an A or an A plus or whichever the absolute top tier grade is, doesn't mean your classmates aren't. For example, I'm aiming for a first class degree because I think I'm capable of it, and because I'd rather have a first class degree than a second or third. It's just the way I am. And it's something I noticed through a lot of people that doubt the likelihood of companies behaving in their best interest is, until you've pushed yourself to be as capable as possible in whichever avenue you're exploring, you don't really understand what it takes to be that good. It's without criticizing billionaires, not overtly, or like there's a common saying like, to become a billionaire you have to be ethical. It's like your ethics and morals and have to be. Yeah, but you've not been in that position. Just because you didn't want it as badly as they did, you don't understand what it takes to get there. And at the same time, if you're complaining about the billionaires such as I'm trying to go with, I try to do many things alphabetically because I feel that removes bias, or at least makes me focus on where my bias goes. So Bezos, Jeff, if he wasn't, hell bent on being a billionaire, we wouldn't have Amazon. If we didn't have Amazon, let's be honest, many people who criticize billionaires and their ethical drives are big proponents of Amazon. If you don't like his ethical notions, or you don't think that billionaires should exist, don't use Amazon. It's a direct hypocrisy. It's a direct contradiction of your ideological belief. In the same way that Gatesville, if you really don't think that billionaires should exist, or that being a billionaire is ethically wrong, stop using Windows. And by that same principle, go find Jobs Steve's company. I don't know who the current is. It Tinker? That's not the important point here. Fact is, you keep criticizing it. If you want to participate in the modern society, you have to accept that that's the price you're paying. Is you are going to have to sacrifice and compromise some of your ideological principles to be entirely non-hypocritical. Yeah, don't get me wrong, like, I won't pretend to know everything about the companies. However, I'm pretty damn sure that in my bedroom right now, there's probably, I don't think of anything specifics a bit derivative. Regardless of what item we're focusing on, whether it's athletic gear, books, computers, decorative items. Ecological improvement items, being used to describe as houseplants. The point stands is, I'm sure pretty much, maybe not everything in this room, but probably the majority of things in this room have something in their either production process, marketing process, any part of it, there is probably something I would ethically disagree with. However, just because I'm ignorant to the fact doesn't mean that ignorance is bliss. Just because I'm ignorant to the ethical conundrum posed by these companies doesn't mean I actively endorse or don't endorse it, because I want a computer and to complete my academic courses and participate in social life and doing my own personal research and, you know, the entertainment and education value. I want a computer. I just want a computer in the same way that other people want other things. The smartphone's a great example. So many humans complain about the construction of smartphones and whatnot. They're not going to stop using their smartphone because they don't want to be excluded from society. Fine on this. Oh well. Pardon me. Okay. Company A, country A, international sporting event triggering emotions. Wrap it all together. To me, the logical conclusion should be obvious, and I'm trying to. It's that old phrase, like, if you can't explain it simply, how well do you actually understand it? So, you know, I'll go and do my best to explain it. Pardon me. Yeah, was it a Mason one or something? Oh, it was a rook instead. Yeah, it would be causing me one. Fair, I missed a few quick mates here, just probably because I was talking. You know, don't make excuses. Maybe because I was following the aesthetic of the bishops. I got distracted by aesthetics. A little bit. Now, let's put it in. Let's bend the light. Let's put it there. Ooh. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Alright, so company A, country A, international sporting event, behavioural conditioning, involuntary behavioural conditioning. That's the big thing. That's the important thing I would want everybody to be aware of, is regardless of how awakened you are to the universe's ways, how conscious you feel, how enlightened, you know, spiritual. You know, there's many different ways to look at it, probably over a million. Then, at some point, you have to accept that however enlightened, I'm going to use the word enlightened just for simplicity's sake, however enlightened you feel you are, somebody else is more enlightened than you are. However, and this, you know, enlightened isn't inherently morally good or bad. And so no matter how upstanding a citizen you feel you are, there's somebody more upstanding than you. There's somebody that makes you look like a complete degenerate. In the same way that however bad a person you think you might be, there is somebody that makes you look like an utter saint. The human spectrum of morality is so vast that the simple notion that you don't think people would socially engineer their customers or their citizens, to me, is foolish. It's naive. I mean, look throughout history. Humans love warfare. It's actually one of the things humans probably do best. Throughout our entire history, we have very, very consistently conducted warfare. You know, maybe we're not the best species at it. Maybe there's another species on planet Earth that does it more clinically, more effectively, and I've really want to. You know, I was saying about no coincidences or random, and I have this habit of killing every insect coming into my room and start talking about war, and all of a sudden I notice an insect flying around my room. Yeah, it's things like that. It seems, oh, it's just a bug, it's not a big deal. When the speaking about things and the environmental happenstance occurs, to you, hundreds, if not thousands, perhaps more, at least thousands of times, you stop believing in coincidences. You stop believing in randomness. Just not a thing. Okay, time check. Where are we? That's 49:49. Okay, I feel like I've pretty succinctly wrapped up my ideas there. There's probably a little more to continue with the idea of associating company A and country A with international sporting events, emotional triggering, please feel free to type in the comments any ideas you have about it. I'd love to speak about this further. I think the critical aspect to take away is you're always being marketed to, whether you're aware of it or not, whether how conscious you are of it is somewhat irrelevant. You're being marketed to. By simply coming onto this channel, I'm marketing myself to you because my channel's got a specific title that I consistently title every episode with, which means any repeat viewer or listener is going to effectively start associating that title with my voice, or with chess, or with long strings of thought. In the same way that every time you, for example, this is on a few different platforms, I stream it on Twitch and I broadcast it on YouTube. Effectively, if you became a loyal subscriber, then effectively the Twitch brand might start, or the YouTube brand might start becoming more willingly associated with my brand. And you'd see with other channels as well. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Rogan, or Jocko Willink, or Jordan Peterson, or Lex Friedman, or Craig Jones. There's so many different people online that you don't understand that there's going to be subconscious and unconscious associations being made in your mind, simply because at a chemical level, if you're watching for entertainment, there's a very straightforward dopamine association being made, and your brain will fiend for dopamine. Never underestimate the power of an addiction. In the same way that if you're watching it for entertainment purposes and you're going to be a bit more forceful with yourself with it, in fact, your body's still going to recognise those patterns. Humans are innately pattern recognition machines. Okay, I think I've summarised what I want to say this week. I'll put a bit more of a summarisation in the episode description. Please, comment, like, share, everything you want to do with it. I would actually kind of like to build this channel up a bit because, well, it'd be kind of fun to be a professional podcaster. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.